Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of and today we kind of touched on it a little bit last week, but it wasn't the conversation, and I wanted to do it this week. So we are going to be talking about, are reboots a bad thing? And for the most part, we pretty much kind of gave our answers on the last episode. So if you didn't hear that, then this is going to be fresh for you. But
No, actually, the real answer is if they didn't hear that, then that means they need to go back and listen.
yeah, pretty much they got to do that. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. We already kind of discussed it, and then we've got another thing going on with this episode as well. So that's going to be cool. So, what do you think as a whole? Reboots, good or bad?
I love the fact that you decided to tell me to make a list because I had time to really think about it. Because now that I really think about it, it's almost like a catch-22. Yeah, it's so difficult because I hate it. You know, it's like, wow, like really, Hollywood, you can't come up with an original thought. But then sometimes you get such great things that happen, and this isn't in the vein of a reboot or anything, but adaptations as well. So you start thinking about they're turning everything into a movie or they're redoing everything, and then it's like, oh, come on, but damn, that's how we got Addams Family and Addams Family Values, and it's like, damn it. So when it comes to reboots, I found this middle ground where I kind of think of maybe reboots for the sake of reboots are a bad thing. But when a reboot is made because maybe the first one was a misfire, or you can just build on it in such a different way, then maybe it's a good thing, because there is no cut dry answer. Because as I came up with my list, I started out with the bad reboots first, and I'm like, oh yeah, reboots suck. And then I started going to my good list, and I'm like, thank God for reboots. So I don't know how you feel, but me, I haven't been this conflicted since I wanted Taco Bell before going to Six Flags.
What's wrong with you, man? Anyway, I was just gonna ask you too, because you mentioned Addams Family. Now, do you consider that a reboot or more of an adaptation? Because I feel like there's at least for me, there's like a clear difference between something that's being rebooted and something that's being brought to a different screen for the first time. So like Harry Potter is a adaptation of the books.
Correct.
All the Marvel movies, they're adaptations of comic books, and I believe that you get the A-Team and stuff like that, they're adaptations of a TV show. Do you see that as a difference, or do you consider that reboots as well?
No, they are absolute differences, and that's one of those things that I was thinking about while I was making up my list. It's like, no, that's an adaptation, because what almost ended up on my list was How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Right.
And I'm like, wait, no, because that was a cartoon, a very short cartoon, which is a classic, but the Jim Carrey How the Grinch Stole Christmas is one of my favorite Christmas movies. But I would say, no, that's an adaptation. That really wasn't a reboot. That was an adaptation. But the new Grinch that they made, you could say that's a reboot of the original cartoon and of the Jim Carrey live action. And well, that movie didn't do too well in theaters anyway, because
I know you don't have a call coming through.
I think I forgot to maybe let me see if I can silence.
Yeah, come on, man. So unprofessional. So
come on,
three episodes in, and you're so unprofessional, buddy.
You should be happy that I even figured out how to use the interwebs. Okay, so like you
no, I'm not going.
Look, we can't all have a fancy setup. Some of us just have fancy action figures. Just
whatever.
The figurines.
Get out of here.
So,
anyways, I agree. I do think that there is a clear cut difference between an adaptation and a reboot, because I feel like an adaptation is trying to give somebody a visual of something they haven't seen for the most part. Whereas I feel like a reboot a lot of times just feels like a shameless cash grab where you're like,
Yes.
oh, that thing was really good. Let's do it. Oh, that thing, people love that thing. Let's do it again. So at a certain point, I feel like I don't have a problem with adaptations or not reboots, but like reimaginings. Well, like Ghostbusters. Like, I don't consider that a reboot at all. I consider that a reimagining of a story. I don't really see it as a reboot, only because how is it a reboot if none of the original characters are in place or any of that stuff? It's not really a reboot.
Yeah.
It's just it's a reimagine. You could even call it a sequel of sorts, you know what I mean? But I think that there is a clear difference. And I think that I don't have a problem with adaptations as long as they are not done in a way that feels like they're simply trying to grab the attention of certain people. Like when you adapt something, like one of my biggest problems with a lot of comic book movies is that they have been catered to casuals. You know what I mean? Instead of being catered to the fans of actual comic books, because I feel like the casuals are going to come regardless. You know what I mean? You don't really have to worry about that, but you do kind of run amok of upsetting your core fan base when it's not done right. Like, I feel like, could you imagine what Harry Potter would look like if they wiped their ass with the source material? They're just thinking about those fans and ish. I don't want to be in that room.
Well, we have to, and that's funny that you say that, because that's one of the arguments that was made for the entire the last 3 Star Wars movies, where the joke is, they were like, well, we couldn't stay original to the source material and draw new fans, and then it's like, Jon Favreau, hold my blue milk, with what he did, what him and Dave Filoni did with the Mandalorian, where they brought in a whole legion of new fans while still acknowledging what the original trilogy was. So it's like, no, it's possible, and anyone who says otherwise, it's a cop out for their quick cash grab, where they weren't even concerned with the material or the fan base. They were just like, hey, like you said, hey, this was popular once. We made money off of this. Let's do it again.
Yeah, and I think that's my bigger problem with reboots is that they serve no purpose in a way. Like, it doesn't feel like when they're making reboots that they're just like they're really trying to do something different. It feels like if you look at like Beauty and the Beast, it was really just a shot for shot remake of the original. They didn't add anything special. I guess you could say the character models look different, but they honestly look worse. In my opinion, they just look creepy. But like, you have to, if you're going to do a reboot, you have to do something that sets it apart. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've been talking about doing a reboot of like White Man Can't Jump, which I hope they never end up getting around to. But if you did that, it couldn't be the same thing. Like, the problems that, like, you couldn't have whoever it is his girlfriend go on Jeopardy. That's just not Jeopardy's not that show anymore. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it would have to be something completely different, but even still we'll have to add something. Do you know what I mean?
And it would have to be like a hilarious comparison, like White Man Can't Jump, and what they're doing is, running away from the cops, and Woody Harrelson's character gets beat up by the cops because he couldn't jump over the fence. Like let's really spice it up a little.
But I mean, it was like what's the movie? Guess Who, right? With Bernie Mac and Ashton Kutcher is a remake of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. What they did was they flipped it around. Instead of having, this white woman bring this black man home, they had this black woman bring this white man home, and it was just different. I didn't like the movie, but I appreciate them not trying to do the exact same thing, because they couldn't. There's no way. You can't replace Sidney Poitier, so what difference is it going to make? You have to do your own thing. And I appreciate that. Like I said, I didn't like the movie, but I appreciate it.
What's funny is I didn't even think about that, because that also goes into the Overboard remake that they did.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, me neither, because it's funny, you grow up with some movies that are just classics and they're great, but then in today's climate, it's like you couldn't release Overboard today. Like
Nah, it's
really
not the same.
a guy, and it's like, it's funny. It's the same thing with what the downfall of the movie Passengers versus the success of Beauty and the Beast. It's like, I love the movie Passengers, but everyone attacked it because it's like, oh, it's Stockholm syndrome and we're celebrating it, and then it's like, oh yeah, but you guys are gonna applaud Beauty and the
Beauty and
Beast
the
and
Beast.
completely ignore what's happening there again. And it's like, it's not even like it caught you off guard. It's a shot for shot remake. So
But I also think another problem with like remakes and stuff like that is we live in a world where fandoms rule all. Like,
yeah,
there are people who literally devote their lives around A Nightmare Before Christmas. That is, in my opinion, insane. Like, you cannot build an entire personality around you shouldn't. I'm not gonna say you can't, because obviously people are doing that, but you shouldn't build your entire personality simply around like a movie or something like that. You have to be able to objectively like and dislike things and stuff like that. Like, a lot of these Disney remakes come out because, one, now we have a culture where people are really like enjoying the villains. You know what I mean? People are really celebrating the villains, not because they were good villains, but they just really like villains now, so we're gonna see more movies like Cruella. I'm assuming at some point Ursula is gonna be coming out. A movie about the stepmother from Cinderella is probably gonna be coming out. We already got Maleficent, like, you know what I mean? I see a trend happening here, and we're gonna see more of that, and I don't really think we should. But that's just me. I feel like villains are better when they're villains.
No, it's that becomes a really, when I think about it, that's more of a commentary on our times. Because you look at the news, every time something happens, do they talk about the victims, or do they talk about the tragic backstory of the guy who decided to walk in somewhere and, well, he just had a bad day. No, he's a murderer. Like, so it's kind of like, it's like, I'm seeing parallels here, and I can't help but notice them. So that's me, though. I don't know.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I
can't be alone on this
I'm right
one.
there with you. All right. So let's go ahead and get to the meat and potatoes here. I asked you to write a list of 5 reboots that you like, TV or movies, and 5 that you disliked. So I would personally like to go with what we like first, because I think dislike is going to be a lot more fun. In no particular order. This isn't like this. I don't have them in order at all. I just picked the ones that I like, and I kind of bent my own rules a little bit. So it's all good. And so let me know. You'll start. Give me your first one, and then I'll give you mine, and back and forth and back and forth.
All right. And there will be some honorable and dishonorable mentions.
We're not doing any honorable or dishonorable mentions.
I'll work it into the conversation. But first off, no particular order. I'm going to start with a reboot, which I love, and that is going to be The Mummy. When, and this is one of those cases where it's like they did something new, they did something different, because you take the original classic, and it's like, okay, that was great for the age of black and white films and people starting to find out what movies were. And then you throw into the mix Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and Oded Fehr, and it's this whole new thing that's just, it blew my freaking mind when I saw that movie. When I saw the first trailer for The Mummy, I was like, wow. Like, I remember just being like, wow, just seeing, it was the perfect trailer where it didn't give anything away, but it set up the stage for what you were in store for. And to this day, I can watch The Mummy, and it's almost like the first time I watch it every single time. I enjoy the movie from start to finish, through and through, the characters, the story, the narrative, and the cinematography, the settings, everything about that movie, I love.
No, I agree. The Mummy is I remember that I didn't catch it in theaters. I caught it on TBS back in the day, when that was the thing, when they used to like get really excited for the movies they were going to premiere, and they would play it for like a week straight. So I've seen it for like a week straight. And it is. And now that you're saying it's a reboot, it makes sense because I remember the original is what, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb from way back when, or was it just called The Mummy?
No, I think it was Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, and it was black and white. We're talking like 19.
But you know what? That to me is also the perfect example of how you reboot something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're taking something. I remember on Halloween, my mom used to have this tradition. We would watch all the old black and white ones, Dracula, Frankenstein, all that shit. And then to me, it would be like, man, that would be cool. But they are also like I was a kid born in the 90s. You're gonna have to give me a little more than that. You know what I mean? So it's like those would be things that should be rebooted. And Dracula was, I guess. But all right.
Yeah, but
my first one on my list, this is from TV, is Voltron. Now there were two Voltron reboots. The first one was Voltron Force, which was absolute garbage, but Netflix adapted Voltron and it was absolutely amazing. The only thing missing was the end owl formed the head, but I just did it. I just did it myself every time they transformed, so it made me feel better. But it was, to me, this is like the way you reboot something too, because this, even though I knew about Voltron, if I didn't, this would be a great way to introduce it to people who have never seen it. Because if you've never seen the original, you have no frame of reference, so you're seeing it for the first time. And to me, it's interesting. You give the characters more development now, because back then everybody was one dimensional. They were just like, that's a guy who does things. Now everybody has a backstory. Everybody has flaws and weaknesses, insecurities, all these different things. So it brings this greater universe together. And the show just turned out to be off the chain. And honestly, Netflix has done a good job with that one. They did a good job with She-Ra too. So, and now they've got He-Man coming up. I'm excited. So.
And now they set the bar too. That's their problem too. They set the bar.
And they have not disappointed.
Nice.
All right. What's next on the list, buddy?
I'm going to go with... Actually, I'm going to leave that one for last because I got more discussion on that one. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be Casino Royale. So this one was a reboot, remake, sequel. We'll never really understand because we'll never really understand how the James Bond mythos really works.
I was just about to say that too.
Yeah, I'm sticking with it. How I said, I can't wait. Faces are gonna melt. I'm putting it on the record again. Jane Bond, it's gonna happen. But Casino Royale would technically be a reboot because they remade an old movie, but they also restarted the entire franchise with an origin for James Bond. We will see how it plays out because you have certain characters in there that are clearly sequel characters. You had Judi Dench to begin with, and it's like, okay, you had R, who was still brought in after the Pierce Brosnan one. So it's like it has sequel elements, but it's a reboot. And they completely rebooted the entire franchise with the tone. And that's the biggest distinction why I decided that this one is a reboot, because they completely changed the entire dynamic of the James Bond universe.
Right.
It was like you take the old James Bond, campy, fun, ridiculous, over the top, great. They're just great. And now it's like every 00, like I can't wait to see the next one, and just the entire tone that they did with how they shifted the entire tone of the series. That's why I consider it a reboot that I am so happy happened, because I've never been more excited for 007.
I'm gonna be real, I haven't seen any of the ones with Daniel Craig in it. But yeah, because I was just gonna say too, like if my theory on James Bond that it is just a title and not a person stands, and it would be like a sequel that happened twice. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna take your word for it, and I might catch up on these Daniel Craig joints. I don't know. really seem like a lot more action than espionage, but I'll check. I'll see. Like I said, I haven't seen them, so I cannot educatedly say that, but yeah. All right. My second one is me bending the rules just a tad bit, but I'm going to go with the Dark Knight trilogy. And the reason I'm going with the whole trilogy as a whole is because it is a rebooted universe, because technically all the way up till George Clooney was still considered one Batman universe. It was still sequels to the original. So this is a reboot of Batman, and now we're getting another reboot of Batman, which I don't think we need right now. It's kind of soon, but I wasn't sold on Batman Begins right away, but after watching it a couple of more times, I was like, all right, I see what's going on here. And then obviously, the Dark Knight is, the one that everyone loves to bring up, but I think that the Dark Knight Rises is criminally underrated. I think that it gets shitted on a lot, but it doesn't deserve it. I think it's a great movie in its own right, and accurately tells a better story of Bane than Batman and Robin ever could.
You bring up this Batman and Robin all the time. To this day, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's right. I keep forgetting
it
doesn't exist.
That doesn't
Super
exist.
Mario Brothers or something.
What? The video game? Why would you bring up a video game in a movie discussion? I don't get it.
It's weird. It's weird how that just keeps happening all the time.
Man.
But no, I mean, honestly, though, the reason why I think this is a really good reboot isn't just because it's like Batman. Obviously, Batman has great stories, great villains, all that other stuff. But what it does is take Batman out of the campy era and put it in a whole different one. And that's something that needed to happen. And that's why I think when you do reboot something, you have to give it something as well. You can't just be like, hey, let's do Batman again. Like, could you imagine if Tim Burton just did Adam West's Batman and it was like, all right, different costumes? Like, it wouldn't fit in that era. If you brought that in the 90s, we would look at you like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, you have to bring something extra. And I think this was just that it was just dark enough without going into like crazy territory, which is where people want it to go, apparently. Yeah, it was dark. The mob got shit done. They killed people. Villains killed people. They weren't just robbing random banks all the time. You know what I mean? Like, there were legitimate genocide plans involved that Batman had to stop. And I thought that it brought out an extra layer of the Batman character. Instead of just being a guy who saves the day, he's a guy who saves the day, but also has conflictions about some of the shit he may have to do. So, it's more, I wouldn't say more interesting because the times are different, but it's the way you're supposed to reboot something. You have to give it something extra. And I think this trilogy did that perfectly.
Okay. Well, I'm actually glad you cheated and threw in the entire trilogy, which I didn't know we could do. But when you think about it, that's probably the only trilogy that would work. But now that means I don't have to have Batman Begins on my list. So
you just go ahead and take that off. Throw in one of your little honorable mentions, I guess.
Scratch that off real quick. And I'm actually going to go for a movie that it's pure camp. I love it, but it was just such a fun movie for me, and that was Ocean's 11. This was
okay, yeah, that is a remake of the Frank Sinatra joint.
Yeah, and it's like you look at what they did, and I'm like, okay, the reason it works is because of it took the same concept, the same layout, essentially, but they updated it to make more sense for a modern age. And it's just so fun, the characters, the dynamics between them. You get the great bromance between Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and then you got Matt Damon in there, just Matt Damon the whole time, but he kills it at that. It's he works in that role. Everyone in that movie was perfectly casted. I always find an excuse to have Don Cheadle in anything. I'm always like, they could have had Don Cheadle in that, and they did. They had him in this one, and everyone delivers. Everyone kills it. It's just a fun movie. I watched it again when it first came out, when it was first on DVD. whoa, DVD, watch out.
Oh, watch
I
out.
remember,
Showing your age, buddy.
yeah. I remember I was probably watching that movie like every weekend. It was just so fun. And then I rewatched it for the first time in probably 10 years, a couple months ago. And it was funny because I'd forgotten so many parts of the movie. So it was kind of like watching it again for the first time. And I was like, man, I remember how much fun I used to have with this movie, but
It still holds up.
it still holds up, and I was having fun again because of all the parts I forgot. Like when I completely forgotten about Brad Pitt teaching Topher Grace how to play poker. And that, like, I
Yeah.
couldn't stop laughing because that whole scene is just like, I wonder if there are con men out there who are just trying to make a better life for themselves, and they're in a room with a bunch of celebrities. These days, it would be like what, influencers or something, and
Yeah, something like that.
they're like, I could kill everyone in this room. Everyone would thank me. I would take all their money and disappear, and no one would even care. Like that's how I felt Brad Pitt's
Right.
character, and that's conveyed in the scene. And it's a fun movie from start to finish. And that was back when the twists, the great plot twists were still fun. You know, they didn't try to beat you to death with it throughout the entire movie. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, that was subtle. I should have seen that. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, of course, totally. You know, but now it's just like, oh, gee, I wonder how much of this movie is not going to make sense because they have to force a plot twist in there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
agreed.
yeah.
No, but I enjoyed that one too. I enjoyed all the Oceans, honestly. I haven't seen the Ocean's 8 because I didn't like the setup of the plot, but I will eventually check it out because Rihanna is in it, so duh. But
That's how they got me with Valeria.
don't you? I was gonna say, don't you say Battleship?
No, oh God, no, yeah, too. Oh my God, yes.
I got suckered into Battleship. That movie
God,
sucks.
we could have an entire episode on Battleship, and it's like, yeah, there was a reason why she was all over the trailer. I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
And barely in the movie. they ja ruled us.
Yes, they did.
Us. All right, let me go. All right, my next one is going to be
Ask any sailor, any real sailor.
You stupid. All right, my next one is going to be Dredd. I thoroughly enjoyed this only because one, I could always do without Sylvester Stallone. I'm sorry, man. He's best when he's not speaking, and that's what I love about. It's just like Cliffhanger was such a good movie because he had minimal lines. Rocky was such a good movie because he was getting his ass beat half the time. Like, but him and Dredd, he talked way too much, and you know, it was still a pretty cool movie. I'm not gonna sit there and say that it's not, but this remake took that shit up to 11. And the best part about it is Carl Urban he never has to be Carl Urban. You know what I mean? Like, it's what he did in this movie is what was flawed about Spider-Man 3's Venom. Is that he kept having to show his face. He had to keep reminding you that Topher Grace is playing this character. And it's like, we already know that. Just give me the Venom mask. It's the same thing with the Tom Hardy one.
Look who's in the movie.
It's too much of that. Like, we know. I was here. I've been watching. I know that he's Venom now. We saw his face enough. We don't have to see him while he's Venom, and it's dumb. But Carl Urban never needs that attention. He is this character. He goes through this entire movie with his helmet on. And it's badass. The villains are badass. All the fights are badass. Everything about this movie just ramps it up to 11. And I know a lot of people probably didn't really like it, especially at first, but then it became a cult classic. And I caught it on Netflix when it was out back in the day. And I was just like, yo, glad I did this. Cause this was a good reboot. This really, it changed it. It wasn't nearly as corny as the original. And it was nonstop from the gate. And I loved it. And you can't go wrong when you have Wood Harris in a movie. So, you know what I mean? Let's do that.
Yeah. Again, another actor who needs more roles.
Like, more roles he's played. Oh, you talking about Wood? I thought you were talking about Carl Urban. I was like, he's played everything.
No.
Dude's
totally.
been an elf. Dude's been a a literal god dudes with everything.
It works.
Good old Carl Urban. Wish I had a name like Carl. Nah.
With a K.
With the K. And he's Australian, so it's even better. And he's also pretty awesome in The Boys. If anyone has not seen it yet, I suggest you do. It is a very good show.
Again, I am glad you brought up Dredd.
Are you taking that one off your list as well?
I'm not gonna take it off my list. I'm actually gonna be able to combine two. I was gonna leave Dredd for last because this goes into our whole conversation of if you reboot something, do something that distinguishes it.
Yeah.
But then that doesn't always win. So with Dredd, okay, Judge Dredd is one of those movies. I love it. I love Judge Dredd because it's so bad it's good. Okay,
yeah, it is.
It's so bad it's good. Like this is one of those movies where it really, when you ask so bad it's good, it's on my list every single time. I love this movie. I can watch this movie. I laugh. I mean, Armando Sante as a villain, I can never take seriously. But in this movie, for some strange reason, it works. It's ridiculous. And here's a case where what went right, what went wrong. The uniform clearly torn straight from the pages of the comics.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how they could be so faithful to the source on certain aspects, but then we're never supposed to see Judge Dredd's face. Like that's his thing. And we can't help but like the whole time we get it is an actual Sylvester Stallone movie. Yeah. And Dredd is definitely a comic book movie. So it's funny how sometimes changing the formula works. They changed the outfit because the comic outfit was ridiculous. It's supposed to be. It's a comic book.
Yeah, they look like dress blues with shoulder pads.
Yeah, comics have to be colorful. That's why they wear blue spandex in the X-Men. It's like come on, it's a comic book. It has to be.
And it doesn't translate to movies.
And it doesn't. It really doesn't. But Dredd changed the formula and made it better. And then you got a movie like Hellboy, which is the original, really campy, really fun. Love it. Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2, those are movies I can watch at any time, and I love them because of what they changed and how they changed it and how they adapted it to the characters. Ron Perlman is perfect as Hellboy, and I never knew that was a character we needed. Usually I see Ron Perlman and I'm like, oh God, this guy again, but in Hellboy, it was perfect. It worked. And it was just everything that was right with a director who has a vision and how to implement that. But then you get the reboot, which I guess was supposed to be more true to the comics, much more violent, much more ridiculous. And then it's like, no one asked for that reboot, and we're like, no, we were waiting for Hellboy 3. Why are you giving us a new Hellboy with a different, if you wanted to go dark and make it crazy, who said you couldn't have Ron Perlman and Guillermo del Toro come back? Like what?
And I mean, honestly, if you're doing any kind of cool costume design, why on earth would you not call Guillermo del Toro? Like, that's the guy.
Yeah. And it's like, and Guillermo del Toro, for me, he kind of changed the game in the way that no one had done since. And now I had his name, and now I can't think about it. But the creator of the guy who worked on everything like Aliens, Predator. It's like when it came to costume design, he was the guy you called. And right now I'm talking about movies, and I can't remember a freaking film icon's name.
It's fine. Everybody, you don't need to remember everybody's name.
Yeah. So,
were you in agreement with me?
Oh, absolutely. Dredd was a movie, and I saw it in theaters. I own it in 3D. That's a movie that I can't get enough of, and I want more of it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess then we're on to number 4.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my 4th is, and this is gonna ruffle some feathers probably, but Power Rangers. I enjoyed this new one.
Stream.
Don't tell
How
me.
do I?
No, you stay right there. You stay right there. My only gripe with this movie was obviously the lack of like action, and they really saved it for the end there. But I had no problem with this. I thought it was an interesting way to introduce the original team, since there's been so many different versions of Power Rangers over the years that no one can remember, but we can all remember Jason, Zach, Trini, Kimberly, and the other guy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Billy. But it was like, I don't know. It was still campy and it had its moments, and I'm not even going to front. There was a legitimate moment where I felt something in my heart there when Billy died, and that was pretty hard. That hurt. And then that slow ass Stand By Me remake.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler.
You haven't seen it by now. That's on you. I'm not spoiling something that's been out for like 6 years. It's impossible. Come on now. But I going back to the reboot conversation, this was a different way to do this. Like, the idea of Rita being the original Green Ranger was pretty cool. The idea that Zordon used to be the Red Ranger is pretty cool. Something that was never really talked about outside of maybe the comics, which, TV show first, so we're going with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like, and I think that while casting choices aside may have been iffy, but the way that these characters are portrayed, that their overall issues and problems and within each other is actually a really good thing, because even now that you're looking back at it, the characters in the original were generic. They were generic teenagers for the most part, and I think that's when
they were teenagers with attitude.
My bad. My bad. I forgot. I had forgotten that they were teenagers with attitude. But I think that if you're going to do, like, once again, if you're going to reboot something, you have to bring something new to the table. And I think this definitely did that, even though I wasn't a big fan of how they formed the Megazord or anything like that, because it really was just they ripped off Voltron for the most part. But I still enjoyed that it looked different. I still enjoyed that it felt different. I still enjoyed that there were stakes, because you never felt like, no matter how many monsters destroyed Angel Grove, you never felt that the stakes were high. You're like,
because how are they destroying the same buildings again? Like, people still live there? Like, what is going on? How are kids in school when...
Exactly. And I'm still upset we're not getting the sequel after they teased me with the Tommy Oliver thing, but, whatevs. Jerks.
Well, that's not their fault. That was total lack of interest.
Well,
but that's a reboot. Right there, that's a reboot. What happens when, even if you make a great movie, if it's a reboot no one was asking for, you fall into that trap. So you could love it as much as you want, but who was saying, you know what, we need another Power Rangers? So
you can't see my hand, but I'm raising it for sure.
Yeah,
just me probably, but yeah, I was definitely like, you know what, I'd like to see
a new Power Rangers. So
that's what I've been waiting for.
Oh man,
right.
But it's funny, because this is going to be an honorable mention real quick. Because sometimes a reboot you never asked for happens, and what would the world be without Robin Williams' The Birdcage?
I didn't even know it was a remake, so I don't know. I have no frame of reference.
There you go. So, but that's all we're gonna say right now. That was a great one. So next, I guess my number 5. I'm gonna change up real quick. I'm gonna change which one I'm gonna talk about, and my honorable mention is actually gonna be the one I'm gonna list as my number 5, because Payback, gotcha, is still a great movie. It's a remake, but it's like, okay, cool. It was a great movie. It was a one-off, but most people don't even know it was a reboot. Let's talk about a reboot that everyone knows is a reboot and actually worked, and that is actually the joke that you started off with: Rise of the Dawn of the Battle of the War for the Apes. The Planet of the Apes. Okay, I actually grew up watching the original, and for the longest time, I thought I was going crazy, because I remember the part 2 more than the first one, and I thought I was going crazy, because I'm like, this is before internet and social media, and I'm like, why do I remember such a different Planet of the Apes than everyone else?
Yeah.
And it's because I actually ended up watching. I didn't know I was watching a different, but I was watching part two, Return to the Planet of the Apes, more than Planet of the Apes, and I'm
Right.
like, yeah, that part of the movie. I'm like, what the hell? But here's a movie.
Wait.
The
Which reboot?
We're talking about the only reboot that matters, because the other reboot is actually on my bad list, and we will get to that. But we're talking about. I'm going to call it what it is, and we're going to call it the Andy Circus trilogy,
Oh
because
yeah. Oh, he's a
it,
genius, man.
man, this was a movie. I was just excited to see it when I saw the first trailer, because I was like, okay, we're going to get to see an origin story on this. I already know how the movie goes, but the way they went about it was not really creating a new story, not giving a backstory. What they did was they talked about the humanity of Caesar and
Yeah.
how we get to this point. And that's what distinguishes the trilogy, and why it made it to a trilogy instead of a one-off, or just a campy movie with a less than known sequel, unless
Yeah.
you're me. And it was just so amazing what they did with I loved the first one, and then when you get part two and they really go into it now being Planet of the Apes, it's just so great. Everyone in those movies, even when you look at the first one, it's like, did we really need James Franco's love story in here? Like, we didn't.
Nah.
We never need a love story in a movie.
We
But
definitely don't need one from James Franco.
yeah, but the thing was, that stupid little side note did not take away from any of Caesar's development.
Yeah.
And really, that's when the movie shines. And just him being in the 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 ape habitat, and you see him evolving amongst his other apes. That was great. When I remember, I had this like gleeful moment when he started signing with the orangutan,
Yeah.
and it was like, because all of a sudden he finally had a link to his brethren, and that was a circus ape who could actually communicate with him. And then that became more of his development. It's like, now he's, could you imagine trying to explain to someone, oh yeah, it's a movie about an ape who has to learn how to communicate with other apes?
Yeah, it sounds
Like,
stupid when you say it like that.
yeah, but that's an oversimplification of events. But yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that was definitely a good one. I enjoyed that. I think, as once again, like, putting it in terms of reboots, this is doing something different. And
yes,
that's like, instead of it being, oh, we're in space, oh, we're on a planet, oh, the planet is just Earth, but with apes in charge. Like, it's just it's a completely different chain of events, of completely different circumstances, and it works. It works so well, because they're still apes. They're not humanoid apes. They're still apes doing just kicking ass and being scary.
Yeah. I loved. I think my the part I laughed at the most when I was watching it in theaters was when they the moment they went up to that fence and they started ripping off the spears from the fence. I was like, I did the Leonardo DiCaprio thing, there they are.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yep, this is it.
There's not a single fence in the world that looks like that. But it's like, it was such a throwback to the original. I'm like, yes, it's about to get real.
I'll take it. All right. And my last one on the liked, and actually what we're going to do is, after this one, we're probably going to cut it, and we're going to do a part 2 next week. Well, not next week, because I'll be gone. But when I come back, we are going to finish up this conversation and do it right. We're going to do the bottom 5. So
that works.
So my last one, the last reboot that I enjoy is The Longest Yard. And
nice.
This one was tough for me, because I had I had some other ones, right? I had what else is on here? It is not important. But
no, it is important. It is important to do honorable mentions. Yes.
I had Punisher. was on here.
Oh my God! Yes,
that was one that I had to kind of leave. I had to kind of let it go. And then I had TMNT, and that's from cartoons. I was from the original cartoon to the first reboot of the cartoon, not the ones that Nickelodeon has been doing. But there was the ones that used to come on Fox Kids in the morning, and it just got in depth. It was the same thing about character development and stuff like that. But I picked The Longest Yard because out of all the reboots I've seen, this one does it right. It really feels, once again, different. And they've added something to it. And that adding is that comedy fun element. The stakes weren't very high. Like in the original, the stakes were kind of high. And now it's like, nah, there's no stakes. There's literally just a game. They don't have anything to win. Like that's the best part about this game is they have nothing to win, and they end up treating it like they do. But it's funny. You have Adam Sandler, you have Chris Rock, you get Goldberg for no reason. The Great Khali is in this movie. Like there's a lot of nonsense going on. Kevin Nash, Steve Austin is in this movie having the time of his life. Like it's a fun movie. It's great. These characters. Nelly still can't act for shit, but it doesn't matter because it's fun. And how could you not like fun? And Burt Reynolds is in it, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so that's always good to have like some sort of callback to the original. And in this case, it's Burt Reynolds. And I really just enjoyed this. There's nothing to say. It's a really good remake.
Yeah. No, that's a fun one. And I did love The Longest Yard. And it's funny how you say it, where it's like the stakes completely changed, and it actually changed for the better because that was they even had ESPN there for the broadcast. I mean, that's
for no
hilarious.
reason.
Like,
for no reason,
you know. No reason. That's like how having ESPN the Ocho made Dodgeball such a great movie.
World Series of Jacks on the next channel. Like, what are we doing here? But that's what makes it so great. That's like the best part about it is ESPN was there. They had fans in the stands. Like, there is no reason for any of this to exist, and yet it does. I love it.
It does, and it's great. It's a great movie. It's a great watch, and it's hilarious. So, great addition, and thank you for bringing up the Punisher because I completely, damn you, list. I knew I was forgetting something, but it's okay because I got to talk about the Birdcage. Watch the Birdcage. You have to
watch Birdcage is good. Birdcage is good.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. We're going to save the other part of our list for the next time we meet. I will be going out of town, so I'll be going for about a month. But when I get back, we will definitely pick up exactly where we left off. So, perfect. Yeah. On that note, later, guys. I still don't have a cool sign off. I don't.
Yeah, me either. I'm like, we can look at the collection. Like, look at my works. Ye mighty and despair.
No, I'm ending this. I'm ending this now. You don't have time to show off. Later, fans.
Right. Later.